Well, hey y'all, Dan here. I'm sitting here in the mountains of West North Carolina, and it's fall and it's just gorgeous. So I was thinking about the things that I need to do as I plan for a long hike. So I've come up with 8 things to do as you plan for a long hike or a through hike. Let's get into it. First on my list is to research the trail that I'm planning on hiking. What will I encounter there? How long is it going to take? What's available along the trail and what isn't? Well, that sort of gives me a baseline of the other things that I'll need to be doing. But every trail is different, and even the same trail is different each time that I go out on it. The seasons change, the weather changes. It's just going to be a unique experience. So I need to research that and start to plan for what it's going to take to hike through that trail. This year when I began hiking Trails Less Traveled, started out in January on the Pinhoti in Alabama, and started in the south to try to avoid some of the more inclement weather. But we had an ice storm and a snowstorm there on the Pinhoti. Then we went from there to Cumberland Island, and it was more like being in the tropics. The island was warm, beautiful weather, but it was a different kind of trail to start to plan for. And then went to the foothills in South Carolina, and here you got sort of a little snippet of the Appalachian Trail. You've got tall climbs and descents. You're going along the river, and you have all these beautiful waterfalls that you're going by, but it takes a different kind of planning, and we would need to resupply halfway through that trail, so we have to plan for that. From there, went to Fiery Gizzard, and here it was a shorter trail, but had different challenges. So every trail that I went on was unique, and every trail had to have a different way of approaching it. So you have to start with planning for each trail that you go on. Researching the trail leads you to the second step, which is to research the gear that you're going to need. When I was in the Appalachian Trail and up in the Smokies, we got some snow, and I used some micro spikes to keep traction through that snow, but then once we got past it, that's just extra weight, so I ended up shipping those back home. Each trail that you go on, it's important to look and see what kind of gear requirements are they. I'm finding with my tent, my duplex tent, in some places, when you've got really rocky soils, you really need a freestanding tent instead of a trekking pole tent. So, I may have to consider that when I'm looking at different trails. What are my equipment requirements there? So just something to think through. And then you also have to think about how you're going to resupply your needs, especially food and maybe water. But as I was going through the Foothills Trail, PTL and I had to think about positioning a vehicle halfway through the trail so that we could then go into town to resupply our food. And then I got on the Ozark Trail, and there's really not a good way of leaving the trail, so I had to take and put food caches out along the trail. I shared that in videos, and I recommend that you might look at those to think for yourself, how would I work this problem that I have? But your resupply strategy is going to be very important. The McKittrick Canyon Trail in Texas has no water, and so there you have to cache water along the way. And then that's really what stopped me on the Ozark Trail, was the lack of water. So not planning well can actually cause you to fail on your hike. You need to research your permit requirements, or permits required for the trail. When we went to Cumberland Island, National Park Service, we had to have a permit to go over to the island. Also paint pictured rocks. When we did pictured rocks, Nicole hikes a lot. She got her permit, but and then You may need to have permits, and you may not. When we went to the Wind River Range, Rick and I didn't have to have a permit. It just depends. So you have to research it. And then as you do, there are some things to consider. You know, for veterans, we're able to get a veterans pass for the national parks, and you have to renew it annually, but you can get a veterans military pass. You can buy a lifetime park pass or an annual park pass, but you do need to consider what your permitting requirements are. The remains of an old brick kiln here in North Carolina. You know, something that's also really important is to test out your gear. You want to maybe do some short overnight hikes if you have, especially if you had new gear, on how to use it, how to set up a trekking pole tent. If you've never done that, it's a little tricky. And then it's good to be able to set it up in different types of weather, whether it's wind or whether it's rain. How are you going to set this equipment up? So yeah, those are important things to consider, to test out your gear as you plan for a longer hike with shorter overnighters. Even in your backyard, because another important thing is to stay in shape in between your hikes. As I hiked a different trail each month, I learned that I quickly get out of shape in between those hikes, unless I'm continuing to stay in shape. So I go for a few miles for a walk every day, just to keep my legs, because I noticed that when I get on those trails, after I had not done anything for a while, how quickly I get out of shape, and it doesn't take long at all. So highly recommend that as you prepare for a long hike, you get in shape. The seventh thing that you need to do as you prepare for a hike is to budget. You know, there are expenses out here. You may want to go into town and stay at a hostel or a hotel, get some town food, get a break from your mountain house meals. You may want to get a shuttle. You may want to go and see something in the local area that's off the trail. But all of these things do require money. And then don't forget, just because you're on the trail doesn't mean that everything just stops back home either. You still have expenses. You know, unless you've sold your house or given up your apartment. Some people do that as they go on long trails like the Appalachian Trail. But if you don't, you still have a mortgage payment, a house payment, a rent payment. You still have utilities that you have to cover while you're on the trail. So there are still expenses, and you need to budget for it so that you can be successful as you go through. If you're not having fun in doing this, you need to find something else to do. You can have fun in a lot of different ways. You may be one who wants to hike big miles, and that's okay. If that's what you want to do, then go for it. You may be more like me, where I'm not really interested in hiking big miles, but I do want to see a lot of things, and I want to take my time with it. So I love going out in nature and just seeing what's there. I enjoy it. Really boils down to that old hiker saying of hike your own hike. Every time I try to hike someone else's hike, it's not enjoyable. I leave that feeling like I really missed something. But when I hike my own hike, then I go away with great joy, and it's the most wonderful experience, and that's why I keep doing it. Otherwise, it's just work, and I'd quit real quick. So to sum up, number one, research your trail. After you've researched your trail, then research your gear. Research your resupply needs. Research your permit requirements. Go on some short hikes to test out any new gear or to make sure that your gear is still in the shape that you need to be comfortable on the trail. Budget for your hike, and then have fun.